I won this duel, now y'all take your knights and get out. Kaladin bursts a light! I should be kidnapped by now. This should have kept him up at night. Hello. This is Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, and I'm reading Rhythm of War. I started the chapters slightly before the book came out. The preview chapters, I mean. I've sent Michael so many voxes that it's getting out of control. I need to talk to somebody, and that somebody is you. Hello there. When I started filming this, I thought it was going to be a 25% book discussion of Rhythm of War. And then I got to filming and I was like, you know what, no, I'm just gonna do part 1. I have a lot of footage already. And by the time I got to chapter 10, I already had so much footage that I just decided to cut it there. So this is just going to be chapters 1 through 10, and we'll see what happens after this. I'm going to try and go chapter by chapter, although some of my thoughts are kind of muddled throughout chapters. So here we go. Prologue. I love this prologue, mostly because I love Navani, but also every prologue covers Gavilar's death from a different perspective, and this one is from Navani's. And I'm thrilled about that because I want to be more in Navani's head, and this sort of promises that we're going to get more in Navani's head throughout Rhythm of War. In this prologue, we don't exactly find out for the first time that, yeah, Gavilar was evil, because apparently some people already knew that. I did not remember that at all when I started listening to the preview chapters. I still have not finished the last 25% of my Oathbringer reread. So I don't really remember what happened in Oathbringer, but as I was reading Oathbringer, we were getting hints that Gavilar is not necessarily a super chill dude. So when I first read this prologue chapter, I was shocked that Gavilar was so evil. And I'm excited that we're gonna get to explore some of that complexity in this book. So basically, Navani is trying to hold things together because Gavilar does not care about the guests. He only cares about meeting with this group called the Sons of Honor. Also, Meridas is trying to like get his claws into Yasna, and she's like, no. We also see that, yes, Navani does love Dalinar, and Gavilar knows it. But also, Dalinar is completely drunk off of his head in this scene. Gavilar and his Sons of Honor friends have these weird spheres where the light is like an inverse light, and Navani's like, what's going on with that? They don't look right. And so Navani, of course, asks her husband, what are these things? She's interested, and she's like, did some Artifabrian create these? This is what she's passionate about. And Gavilar's like, wife, bug off. My secrets are too big for you. You're not a real scholar. And this all makes me very upset because I love Navani, and I think she's a great scholar. And Navani talks about how Gavilar isn't really this bad. Like, he's better than this. It seems like there's been some sort of change that she has noticed in him, which interests me. I was talking to Michael about this, and he was like, it seems like maybe there's something controlling Gavilar, and I agree with that. I think there's some kind of unmade that's controlling Gavilar. The farther I read in this book, the more I think that is completely true. I'm sorry for stealing your theory, Michael. I just think it's a really good theory. Follow Michael. I'm sure you already do. And so Navani is now like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to carry on and make everything look good, and hopefully nobody finds out who you really were. She does not really feel sorrow about his death. So, and then Gavilar dies, and she doesn't really feel any sorrow about that. Okay, chapter 1 is called Calluses. That immediately makes me think we're going to be dealing with Kaladin's disagreement with Lirin in this book. And lo and behold, the chapter is narrated by Lirin, which makes me very happy. One of the predictions that I had prepared for the live stream with Elliot Brooks on the World Hoppers channel, which you should definitely check out. That was a really fun live stream. It's a great channel. It's all for charity. I probably don't have to tell you any of this stuff, but just in case. And already this chapter 1 is like insanity. What is going on? Lirin is treating Parshmen. They're calling them Parshmen, even though we know that they are singers, and Lirin tries to use the correct name for the fused when they come around because they can kill you. So he's like, use the correct term in your head, even when they're not here, and that's Heavenly Ones, I think? I forget. I'm sorry. They would probably kill me. It was so funny watching the Overlady Reads reactions to everything on the 17th Chart channel, which I really love those reaction videos, because she would forget forget names all the time, and her husband would help her try to remember them, and I would be like, yeah, that's like me and my husband for sure. Heroism is a myth you tell idealistic young people, specifically when you want them to go and bleed for you. That's such a Liren thing to say. Even as I was reading that, you probably knew that that was Liren. Liren is having an argument with, unpredictably, someone other than Kaladin about war. There is a big shot Herdazian general that we actually saw in an interlude in, I think, Oathbringer. He's showed up in Liren's hospital in Hearthstone, and he's needing treatment, and they're trying to keep his identity a secret from the Fused and all the singers that are all over the place. Now the singers, there's something weird going on here. It's like they have an occupation of Hearthstone in this chapter, which I wasn't really expecting something like that. It kind of blew my mind a little bit that there's all these singers who have changed from doll form into a variety of new forms, and they are here in Hearthstone, and one of them Liren treated, and she's like, yeah, I remember you treated me and you were kind, but it was probably mostly for the money for my master who was paying you. And the relationship here is just interesting. It's different. And then suddenly a singer guard comes in. Everybody stop what you're doing. There's a spy. You would remember this man. Tall for a human with wavy black hair shorn to the shoulders. Clean shaven. He has a slave's brand on his forehead, including the glyph Shash. And Liren's like, crap, they're looking for Kaladin. 2 seconds later, Kaladin bursts a light. And that's the end of chapter 1. I mean, that was a pretty good chapter, I gotta say. It got me really excited. So really, that whole time, while we're thinking that Liren is trying to protect the Herdazian general, and like, he probably is, he's also trying to protect his son. Apparently, as we find out, he's been warning Kaladin that you're gonna get people killed if you keep coming back to Hearthstone, but Kaladin, like, can't resist. He's always coming back to Hearthstone. So most of chapter 2 is an action tutorial. If you like that sort of thing, you'll probably enjoy it. I did love that there are different kinds of fuse. I also love the way that Brando like ends scenes, because he ends that scene at the end of chapter 1 with Kaladin just like bursting light. Well, then there's a scene with Vale. Vale's bored. She's going around chatting with all the right people in order to get herself kidnapped. And it's just not happening, and she's like, why? I've been so suspicious. I should be kidnapped by now. She would like to be one of the Sons of Honor so that she can infiltrate them, and she's just like, please kidnap me. And by the end of the scene, of course, she's kidnapped, and she's like, yay! There's just something wrong with that girl. You know it from Go. So all the people who were predicting that Shallan would still be dealing with her multiple personality problem, yeah. She's still dealing with it. So back to Kaladin. He's fighting this duel, and he wins, of course. So it seems like when he wins, it makes the Fuse have to leave Hearthstone alone. I won this duel, now y'all take your knights and get out. When Kaladin wins, they take off, and I love that. It sounds so medieval to me. Guys, I am listening to a book club right now. I'm in it, my library book club. I went out for a walk, and this was waiting for me. It's purple. It's beautiful. There's the color that people were talking about. The sword. Oh my gosh. I've been freaking out about the cover art. I love it. I've never had a Stormlight Archives hardcover, and I'm enjoying the experience. So I got that from Alex Nieves. He pre-ordered it for me because I won a contest on his channel, and that was such a gift. Thank you so much, Alex. Definitely check out his channel. His channel is hilarious. I really enjoy it. He's a world hopper as well. I have heard predictions from a writing friend who noticed that Shallan actually has another personality that is the real personality, and I've seen hints of this, that Shallan is like the fakest one of them all. And it's like, what does that mean? Is there another more real Shallan buried under there? Under all the scar tissue? Is there actually a real Shallan that we haven't even met yet or haven't seen extensively at work? And then we come to the end of chapter 2 where Kaladin is talking with his dad Liren, and they're arguing as always, and Cal is like watching the sky and he gets distracted and he's like, okay, our ride is here. I know you said you wouldn't leave Hearthstone, so we can just bring him with us. And the next chapter, chapter 3, starts with a sky barge of Navani's creation. Navani is on this ship. This girl's awesome. And guess what the ship is named? The Fourth Bridge. The sky bridge is bringing Navani and a bunch of soldiers over to Hearthstone so that they can save the people of Hearthstone by bringing them to Yurthiru. But problems ensue. Some fused show up. And of course, fused can fly, so, you know, sky battle. So chapter 4 switches from the airship where Navani is being battled over to Shallan, who is Vale, who has been kidnapped by the Sons of Honor. And we begin to see why she's really here, which is she wants to find Ialai. Now, why she wants to find Ialai, don't really know yet. Maybe she just wants to connect Ialai with the Sons of Honor. When the Sons of Honor are kind of like, well, you know, you'll get to see Ialai someday. She's like, okay, not acceptable. I'm not who you guys think I am. And it ends with that, which, again, with the Brando endings. Then we switch back to Kaladin and the Windrunners on the airship in their air battle. This chapter is all about learning more about the Fused as Cal and his Windrunners defend the Fourth Bridge. And we see the name Leshwi popping up, which is a name we should be vaguely familiar with from Oathbringer, right? She is somebody who has talked at length with Moash and had dealings with him. Now Kaladin's meeting her. She seems to be a kind of recurring Fused, and I'm excited to see where Brando takes us with her because I really, don't know. Regardless, Leshwi is clearly interested in the Fourth Bridge, and they're doing a scouting run, it seems like, to check out the Fourth Bridge. At the end of the fight, Teft goes up to Kaladin. He's like, dude, are you okay? And Kaladin's like, stop treating me like glass! Everybody is treating Kaladin very delicately, and he's feeling a little sensitive about it. And then we switch back to Shallan, and it is Shallan this time, because after Vale says, I'm not who you think I am, Shallan is like, now it's time to spin some lies. And that's what Shallan is really good at. She actually has no idea what she's going to say at this point. She's playing Whose Line with these Sons of Honor.
What time is it? I believe it's 3 o'clock. Well, that means it's time to shop, shop, shop. Hello, everyone. I'm Jimmy. I'm not.
Shallan's kind of worried as this is going on that Adolin is going to come in and try and save her because she said, I'll kind of make a stir if I need you to come save me. And the longer this thing goes, the more likely it is that he's going to see something that's a problem and come after her. Which, of course, is exactly what happens by the end of the scene. Okay, we're back to Kaladin. Kaladin is flying, he's looking for Leshwi, and by the end of the scene, he sees her. So it's go time for Cal, just in time for Chapter 5 to end. And Chapter 6 to begin. Chapter 6 is a loose thread. We start out with a Vale scene.
Oh, it's a radiant scene, excuse me.
We're kind of seeing Shallan learning to deal with the different parts of her head and personality. As the scene ends, the last line is, today, Vale intended to assassinate Ialai Sadeas. Naturally. I mean, yeah, of course. So again, with those Sanderson endings. Love it. And then the next scene is one with Kaladin, where Kaladin, he is still fighting in the air to protect the airship. It's a little choppy, this whole section, and I get why Sanderson's doing it. He's breaking it up. It's so that Vale can have time in between certain scenes to go from place to place. So what's really crazy about this scene is we're seeing inside Kaladin's head. He's been having problems this last year with visions of seeing people that he's supposed to be protecting dying, just like we were seeing at the end of Oathbringer. He's still having problems with that. My prediction is that the fourth ideal is going to be letting go those whom you can't save. The same thing that he told Elhokar, essentially, and the same thing that his dad tells him all the time. Save who you can, be a hero to the ones that you can be, let the rest go. I think that's going to be the fourth ideal. It just makes sense to me. I think I heard that from the 17th shard. They're so good. Kaladin is having trouble with this right now. And then right in front of his eyes, Leshwi shoves a spear through Sigzil's chest. And she just leaves it there, like looking at Kaladin as Sigil's Stormlight is running out. And at the very last second, she pulls the spear out and allows Sigil to heal himself with the Stormlight. It's a super stressful moment for Kaladin, and immediately afterward, Kaladin's like, okay, Sigil, like, bow. Thank the lady, and sends him back to the ship. Go back to the ship. However, the nice thing about getting Sigil out of the way, protecting him, that's something Kaladin's always concerned about, particularly with Bridge 4, gotta protect Bridge 4, is now he gets to battle Leshwi, which he's not bummed about. Like, he enjoys fighting Leshwi, and it's very clear in the next scene that we have with him. However, we are breaking it up. We're going to Navani now. Navani and one of her scribes, Rushu, they are watching the Windrunners and the singers fight. Rushu is like, there's something wrong with this. The way the Windrunners and the singers are fighting, there's just something off. Like, I can't really put my finger on it, but there should be more, you know, fighting rather than idling. And this is something that we know about that Rushu wouldn't understand, because we've been in the heads of the fighters. We know that when the men and the singers are fighting, the singers do not send multiple singers out against one man. They do the one-on-one duel thing. It's an honor thing, because honor was their god before he was human god. And Navani's like, leave the fighting to the fighters, Rushu. But then, you know, as they're making their observations, suddenly Navani sees Moash, the traitor, she calls him. Yeah. He shows up. And then, of course, we switch back to Kaladin. He's having a grand old time with Leshwi. They're just having fun doing the whole lashing thing, the whole battle thing. They like it. It's like a couple thing, except coupling humans and singers. I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing that can happen. I kind of don't think so, because I think they're like different species. That would be kind of weird. My friends keep telling me that this book is mind-blowing, and I don't think that's why it's mind-blowing. The next scene is Kaladin, and he's fighting Leshwi, and they're having a good time. They really enjoy their fights. And then he starts hearing screaming. Uh-oh, Roshon's manor is on fire. So Kaladin honorably abandons the fight. Leshwi's fine with it. She's like, yeah, go, take care of this. And so he goes. That's the end of chapter 6. And so now we're moving on to chapter 7, which is the rarest vintage. So we begin with Shallan capturing Ile. Ile is telling her, there's no way I'm gonna be able to live to tell you all the secrets that you want to know from me. So just check out like the rarest vintage. This whole scene, they're drinking wine. Before Ile really gets to share anything other than check the rarest vintage, which is clearly a hint, Ile gets assassinated. Look at this. I'm starting to get some flags up in here. Chapter 8 is called Surrender. This chapter was the first one that really upset me. First things first. Kaladin starts going to search for Roshon in the burning mansion. Guess who he finds? He finds Moash. He's got Roshon, slits his throat. Roshon dies on the floor with Kaladin just staring at him. He's just watching Roshon die, and he's trying to tell himself what his father always used to tell him, which is, move on to someone you can help. This one is dead. He knows this. It's head knowledge, and he cannot get himself to comply because there's something wrong that everybody knows. It's upsetting to watch. As I'm like sitting and actually reading it, rather than just listening, I'm noticing all of these things much more so. And Moash is like, you came to save him, didn't you? One of your worst enemies. Instead of finding vengeance and peace, you run to rescue him. I think that he is here not for his own vengeance on Roshon, although I'm sure that's part of it. I think he's here to put on a show for Kaladin and get Kaladin to do something. You find out later in the chapter, he's trying to get Kaladin to commit suicide, to stop existing. I don't think Moash is really there anymore. I think he's like Amaram, but like mentally instead of just physically. Whereas Amaram was like still himself inside of his crazy body. I think Moash is not really himself inside of his regular body, because the words that he is spewing from his mouth are odium words. I could be all wrong about this, of course, and we'll see that happening more later in this chapter, but first let's go on to the next scene, which is Shallan. Shallan is searching Ile's chambers. She's like, pattern, find all the patterns. And so Pattern finds some patterns in the floor, and It matches up with the Shin wine, the wine that's made out of the same berry, just like all the other forms of Shin alcohol. Yeah, there's like nothing obvious that they're seeing, but once Pattern finds the patterns, they pull like a block out of the floor, and we get some pattern humor, which I love. Okay, listen to this, listen to this. Here, Shalon said, in the corner, I think this is right. You know, finding the block in the floor, and Pattern says, a few degrees off, so technically acute. Oh my gosh. Pattern is my favorite spread. I love Syl too. Her humor doesn't usually get me the way Pattern's does. Pattern's humor is just so nerdy and I love it. Okay, back to Cal, which is what really matters. He's like remembering all the times that he spent with Moash, and this is really hard. And Moash is like, I did this for me and for you because he deserved it. And Cal is like, don't you dare talk about Tien. And it's a full-blown Cal meltdown. And Cal recognized it. He felt himself slipping, losing control. Ugh, Cal! This is painful to read. And Syl's like, Kaladin, let's leave. Cal is like running out of Stormlight, can't help himself. Can't move, can't do anything but listen to Moash's thoughts in his head. And it's so creepy and scary. So here's partially why this scene upset me. Because one of the major predictions that I had for Rhythm of War, and most people had for Rhythm of War, was Kaladin is going to speak his fourth ideal. Because it should have happened last book and it didn't. He had a couple opportunities and he was not able to do it. And Syl was like, it's okay. It's time for somebody to save you. And like, that's really sweet. But for a soldier, that's a bad sign. He's freezing on the battlefield. He's emotionally having meltdowns. I was expecting, when I was just like listening to this, I was like, is this the moment that Cal is gonna speak his fourth ideal? Like, we're in chapter 8 already? I mean, I know Brandon Sanderson likes to shock people. That would definitely be a shock. I was getting all excited. I was voxing Michael about it. Are we getting the fourth ideal? I was severely disappointed by the end of this scene where, no, Cal does not save himself at all. Or Rashon or anyone. He doesn't save Moash. He can't save Moash. I think Moash is kind of beyond redemption at this point. I think he's kind of like made his bed and he's gotta lie in it. Like, I think he's gone. I think he's been inhabited like the Fused. So he's telling Cal, the answer is to stop existing, Cal. You've always known it, haven't you? Cal is crying and listening. It's a bad situation for Cal. Bad. I just want to stop failing the people I love. Well, Kaladin, you gotta get some help, buddy. It's time. Suddenly, somebody else saves Kaladin. And it's Renarin. Renarin comes in, creates a different version of Moash, the way he did with Adolin, where Moash is safe and he's wearing his uniform. It's really sad seeing what Moash could have become. It's kind of like the, okay, Mistborn spoiler, skip ahead like 5 seconds if you have not finished Mistborn, but it's kind of like Mistborn Gold. So I don't know if that's the case or not. I don't know if it's backwards, forwards. That's the end of chapter 8. And my dreams are crushed.
Good morning! I'm doing a reading sprint with some friends on my YouTube channel. They're over there. They can't hear me because it's on mute, but I have been reading chapter 9, Contradictions. I really enjoyed this chapter. The first scene is Kaladin. It's kind of a mopey scene. This scene actually gets us really deep into a problem that we're going to be facing in this book. I have a feeling much more in depth because I have read ahead a little bit, so I know some of what's going to happen. Kaladin and Syl are talking and Syl's like, you're just tired like all the time. So it's not just the darkness anymore. It's like he's just really tired. And she's like, I don't know how to help you. This always happens when you run out of Stormlight. It's like you need Stormlight to just keep going in general. Life is too hard for you without it. And she says, you freeze whenever you hear reports of the lost Windrunners. Teft comes out and he's like, so I hear Moash was here. What a jerk. I figured someone on their side would have killed him by now because I have to assume they can't stand him either. And Cal essentially just tries to avoid Teft's questions because he doesn't want to deal with this issue. And then the next scene is from Navani's perspective, which I loved. Here is one of the most interesting scenes yet, where she is considering how Fabrials work and how soulcasters work. And she's like, I don't understand soulcasters at all. How is it possible that I understand so many secrets of the universe, but I do not understand soulcasting yet? She says that soulcasters actually manifest in Shadesmar as unresponsive spren. And I think this is going to be an issue. I know some people say that spren in Fabrials, it's like using flames, like flame spren aren't sentient. I think it's going to be an issue though, because I'm sure it's a complex issue for spren as well as for humans. It's not just going to be something that's accepted and easy. Because if I know Brandon, he likes a moral or ethical dilemma. And there's a Words of Brandon that I looked up that said, like, in general, the spren response is not favorable to using spren in Fabrials. Very curious where that's going to end up. Also, Navani says, after studying Urithiru, a lot of the Fabrial technology used there is very simple technology, which makes me think that the singers did not use soulcasters because soulcasters use radiant spren. So in general, I wonder if they were not morally okay with it. But then I've heard people say like that the Oathgate spren doesn't mind being used, and that's like a radiant spren. So we'll have to see. I'm very curious about this issue. Also, I love in this scene where it moves from Kaladin. I didn't even mention where he was. He's on the 4th bridge. And so Navani is actually in her own little carrier. To suddenly she looks out the window and there's like windrunners flying along beside her. So she's actually in midair and it's flying. So I love the way Brandon sets that up. That's just one of those things that he does that I love. Where he'll just put a real moment of like world building surprise kind of embedded in a scene. Super cool factor. And then Navani gets a message from somebody with a secret span read that was hidden in her flying thing. And this person says, you need to stop what you're doing. You imprison hundreds of spren. You have to stop or there will be consequences. I will stop you. And Navani's like, what are they going to complain about next? Using chols? Which I know is an argument that people use a lot, because that's an argument that Dalinar used. And Navani's like, well, we've talked to High Spren, and they all agree that they're not people. They're as unthinking as animals and stuff like that. But I still feel like it's not right to use animals just like locked up in a tiny little cage like that. I'm very curious where this is going to go. And then the next scene is also very interesting. This is Shallan and Adolin, who are also flying together. It's kind of like relationship dynamics with Shallan and Radiant and Vale and Adolin. It's just bizarre how they work things out. Shallan's like, I'm sorry that I keep secrets from you. Does it bother you? And he's like, yeah, it does. I don't see how it couldn't. Like, of course it does. At this point, Shallan tells us that yes, there definitely is another personality that has done things that we don't know the extent of that personality's crimes. That personality is named Formless. And my response to this is, didn't we already do this? Like, okay, overall, I trust Brandon Sanderson to go somewhere interesting with both Kaladin's kind of rehashing of his issues that haven't been totally resolved and Shallan's as well, but we did like just cover both of these things in the last few books. I read literary fiction too, and I've seen mental health explored literary fiction, so he's doing an interesting mixture of the two, and I'm not like mad about it, but it's gonna be hard to pull off. I feel like Ryan here. Ryan, whenever I'm watching the Seeking Stories videos, Ryan's like, well, this is a tough thing to pull off in storytelling. And Sanderson just did it so well, and even though I think there were flaws here and there, I think he pulled it off really well. I haven't seen a lot of fantasy going really in depth into mental illnesses and disorders, and we'll see how that goes. That's not normally what I'm reading fantasy for, but we'll see. Brandon has done this before, where he becomes something that I didn't know I wanted. So I trust him overall, but I am like a little bit tired of the Shallan has another deeper, darker secret than she had before. She decides, I will tell Adolin everything eventually, like I promised him that I will, so I will, and I'm gonna start right now. I'm gonna start telling him about the Ghostbloods. Even though I'm not gonna tell him that I'm involved in the Ghostbloods, I'm gonna start like introducing him to the concepts that I have realized because I'm in the Ghostbloods. So, I mean, I think that's a good start. In the course of their conversation, Shallan and Adolin discussing all of these things and kind of working out her personality stuff, they also mention Scuderial in Taldane. And if you are familiar with some of the Outer Cosmere stuff, you might also know what those are. I really love all the Cosmere references we're getting in here. It's pretty exciting. We're on our last sprint for the live reading sprints, and it's been going really well. I just finished going through chapter 10, A Single Casualty. This chapter sent me over the edge emotionally. I literally sent Michael 30 voxes about this one. Sobby voxes. I was not happy with how this chapter went. So this is the chapter where Dalinar decides that Kaladin is too broken to go on any missions anymore, and he retires him forcibly. What is he uses a specific word that's not retire. While I think Dalinar's right that Kaladin needs a rest, he needs a break, I feel like he could send him on missions that wouldn't involve combat. I feel like there are other options. I feel like he could be sent on leave. I feel like he could be sent off with Rock, as we find out that Rock is going to the Horneater Peaks and he's going to have an escort. I just feel like there were other things that he could have done for Kaladin. The least he could have done for Kaladin was give him more than like a dentist appointment's worth of time in order to retire him and just smack him in the face with it. This should have kept him up at night, this decision, and he should have had better options laid out for Kaladin. He had one option laid out for Kaladin. You can keep training Radiance without even considering what that would do to Kaladin. Like, he should know by now that that's not an option for Kaladin, to just be training men to go off to die and not be there when they need him. So even though he makes a lot of really good points in here to Kaladin, and Kaladin recognizes that he's right, that I should have said my ideal, and I crumpled instead, in Oathbringer that happens, and that's a good point. He's right that he could get his men killed currently. I feel like there were better options. I don't like the way he did it. And he's also wrong about other things, in my opinion. So here's the thing. Kaladin usually identifies with people who are overlooked in Alethi society, and Dalinar, he's privileged, essentially. Even though he's the best of the Light Eyes, there's some things that he doesn't understand. And in my opinion, we're gonna have to see if this is correct or not, but in my opinion, he is not understanding the way things are happening on the field the way Kaladin is. Because he keeps going like, look, Cal, the Heavenly Ones and the Windrunners aren't really fighting correctly. There's a lot of people just kind of sitting off to the sidelines. People aren't giving their all. It's like, you don't understand. Kaladin makes a really good point. He's like, look, killing them is barely an inconvenience because they'll just be reborn. So if they're willing to fight us one-on-one, that is the best thing for us. And I think he's completely right about that. I think he sees the honor in the Singer forces, and even in the Heavenly Ones, who I think maybe have less honor than the Singers in general, because they're more like forces, they're more like Spren. However, there's still like a really strong honor kind of going on there because honor was their god. And Dalinar's like, you never did want to fight the Parshmen. Even when you first joined the army, you didn't want to be sent against the Parshendi. Well, Kaladin makes a good point. I mean, there's a reason why he didn't want to kill them. It's because they have a claim to the land. And Dalinar never really understood that because nobody understood that. Nobody knew at the time that humans were actually the Voidbringers. So Kaladin was right. And Dalinar was wrong. That's how I'm interpreting it. So I think Dalinar is just wrong on slightly right here. So it's just frustrating. Dalinar and Kaladin are two of my absolute favorite characters. Kaladin's my favorite, and then I love Dalinar and Navani. There's other characters I really like, but those are the three that I'm most emotionally attached to. There's been few times when I saw Dalinar and Kaladin go head to head, but in general, I tend to identify more with Kaladin because he is more of a hothead, emotional person, and I wouldn't call myself a hothead exactly, but I do tend to identify more with the people who are downtrodden. I tend to err on the side of Kaladin rather than Dalinar. But Dalinar's like, this isn't a game, son. This isn't about who gets first blood. We're literally fighting for the existence of our people. Well, you know what? Maybe your people are wrong about some stuff. Also, Kaladin spends the first part of this scene finding a Spren, an honor Spren, for R'lain. And I loved that he is trying to kind of marshal the troops, so to speak, and he's like, I'm giving him an order. And Syl is telling him, yeah, that's cool. He will respond to you giving him an order. And she was right. So I was excited to see where that would head off to. And that's not the only thing. Not to mention that, well, at least Dalinar does leave open the possibility that Kaladin could come back to fighting in the future. I feel like Bridge 4 is Cal's family, and when I was ranting about this to Michael was like, look, Brandon is going to be dealing head-on with these mental problems that these characters have, and this is one that's not going away for Kaladin. He's going to have to struggle and struggle hard with this, but I've seen Kaladin overcome so many crazy odds in the past that I think it would be stupid to bet against Kaladin not overcoming this problem and realizing that there's only so many people he can protect and getting back to the fight, because that's what he loves. Dalinar was good to at least leave this open as a possibility that Kaladin could come back and fight. He would be stupid not to. Giving him a break? Yes. Retiring him completely forever? No.
I'm just gonna finish off this vlog by saying my biggest fear with Kaladin,
I just don't see like a lot of great options. I suppose Cal at this point could become a surgeon, or he could become an Anakin, or he swears the fourth ideal and goes back to fighting. Like, those are the three options that I see. Maybe I'm missing something? I don't know. I'm a little scared though, guys.
my biggest fear is that he's not only retired from the front lines, that he's going to be retired from this book. Brandon started out this series with Kaladin's book, so I feel like he's still going to be a very important character, but the fact that he is moving him from the battlefield and saying that it's because he has a mental illness, and people keep telling me, well, you know, this mental illness isn't just going to go away, it makes me worry. Like, I'm seriously so worried because they keep telling me that Kaladin is just going to be retired from the main storyline of the book, because usually Brandon Sanderson's main characters are warriors of some kind. There are some exceptions. Shallan is an exception. She's not usually a warrior. There are some women in Warbreaker who are exceptions, but I'm just saying, most of Brandon Sanderson's main characters are warriors. And I don't want that to happen to Cal, because he's my favorite character. And if you cut Cal out, like what happened in Oathbringer for the most part, I get bored, and I don't want to keep reading. So, for the sake of the series, I don't want Cal to be retired from the main storyline. And I mean, this fear makes sense because Brando set this book series in the most warlike nation on Roshar, Alethkar. Why did he do that if not to make sure that it was going to be a story of war and warriors? But I'm confident. I think Kaladin is a warrior. I don't think you can take that out of him. As long as Kaladin is still here, I'm still going to enjoy this series. Just do not retire him from the main storyline. Please, Brando. Please, I'm begging you. Well, if you stuck around for this super long vlog, thank you so much. Let me know down below if you'd like me to continue on and do the next set of 10 chapters. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more from me, if you want to see the rest of the series. And go ahead and hit that notifications bell if you want to get notified anytime I have a new video coming out. Thank you again so much for watching. This has been really fun. Let me know down below how far you are into Rhythm of War, and if you agree or disagree with any of my comments so far in this video. Take care.